Start? Yeah, great. We are live. So today we are going to go through the brief history of this working group and its roller coaster. And we're going through the main components of the SKG-IF, which is the scientific knowledge graphs interoperability framework, the main components. And in the first part of this session, and then we will move to adoption stories, mostly from SKG providers and SKG powered projects and communities. And then the final part is about Q&A and discussion. So feel free to share your feelings and thoughts about our work. So our history. So we started as self-constituted task forces in 2022, and all our activities were incubated in the interest group on open science graphs for fair data. This is the link for the record. And basically, I think back in 2019, we published the position paper around open science graphs, trying to reach a common understanding on and starting to share and interoperate to share information. But then, of course, the thing moved to a greater extent, and the scope kind of broadened. And we officially proposed a working group and have been endorsed by RDA in June 2023. Initially, we were intended to wrap up in last December, and we negotiated an extension 6 months to June this year, because we thought it wouldn't make a lot of sense to include an aspect that we didn't have really time to tackle properly in the first iteration of our work. Are the meeting notes? Yes, Parul. Thank you, Jan. Thank you. I was saying, yeah, we negotiated this extension to include full-fledged API specifications, and so this part is going to be addressed by Renaud in the last bit of this presentation. So as I was saying, the starting point when we started thinking about interoperability around scientific knowledge graphs, we were thinking mostly scholarly knowledge graphs, as the ones you see here. And I mean, I'm familiar because I work around the OpenAir graph, and but I have worked as a user, not as a producer, with others as well. And I mean, being a producer of data in this kind of domain means that whenever you want to cooperate with someone, you need to establish point-to-point dialogue, exchange of information back and forth. And this means that you end up having lots of mappings, which are cumbersome to maintain over time, and that at some point they backfire you. So I mean, this translates, if you multiply that for possibly all the collaborations established out there, it fires back, because it's a day in, day out, is an incredible extensive amount of work that's reproduced all over the place by different stakeholders. And it would be advisable to have kind of cloud federated kind of way to talk, and therefore, you know, like the language for this interoperability framework to make this exchange, to enable this kind of exchange of information. And so in a nutshell, like the architecture would be like this. So it's just imagine that you have an SKG, and the SKG has an interoperability layer through which, and all the SKGs actually are aware of this interoperability layer, which is common across all of them, that enables each scholarly knowledge graph to expose data files as in a dump and through APIs, so that the other ones can actually read the same format across all of them, and in a uniform way. So as I was saying at the beginning, we were thinking about mostly scholarly communication, but then we onboarded projects and different scientific communities. So we moved away from this picture where you basically have people that model products or research products and broad in the broader context, to something that is inclusive with respect to different output and different contextual information. So I'll address that later on. Just to be clear, the SKG-IF is not a magic centralized implementation that puts everything in communication. So there's no central point. It's just a set of guidelines, and and whomever is interested in adopting the guidelines can do so and be compliant. But there is no, I mean, our decentralized effort is about creating such guidelines. It's not about making the mappings or the conversions or having endpoints that do magic for in regards of federation. There is a new online documentation. Previously in ASEA, we had other meetings, we had other sessions around this to GIF, where we shared the old website. We went through a major refactoring recently, and these are the new pages, the new documentation pages, and we also have a GitHub repository, actually more than one repository. It's an organized GitHub organization with over 10 repos, and each one of them is a clear scope. And you can also, as you know, follow us or join the working group on ADA. In a nutshell, like if you ask me to provide an overview of the SKG-IF, so at the bottom layer is the data model. So we made, unfortunately Silvia couldn't join, but it is one of the ones that committed the most in this aspect. We have an underlying sound data model, which has been devised in the semantic web kind of way. So by developing an OWL ontology. The ontology is, these 6 small pieces, I didn't write anything inside there, but they will become evident afterwards. They are sub-modules. And then on top of the data model, you find the interoperability framework as such. So like you can say that the common exchange format for the information that can flow through different SKG, and the JSON LD context, which is actually providing the semantic mapping and enforcing semantic interoperability of all the data units that are shared, and in combination with Shackle, which is an RDF shape constraint language that agrees that ensures that all the constraints are met. And then on top of everything, we have the new layer of the open API that Renault developed recently. I see something coming in the chat. Could someone put the links to the recommendation, etc.? Yes, I will do that. There we go. It just for your information, the documentation is it's a work in progress. I mean, it's getting a good shape, but there are a few aspects that need to be still polished around the columns. So if you see something that's not meeting clarity enough, just speak out. You can send me an email at any time or open a GitHub issue. So we will address that. We have a few, as Renault knows, that we still have to address, but that's life. I mean, we will go through them eventually, sooner than later. So as I was saying, yeah, so this is the overview. So let's go a bit into the methodology. So the kind of leitmotif that we had all the way, it was about not reinventing the wheel. So trying to reuse the most we could find out there, rather than inventing the N+1 standard. So since the beginning, we onboarded and engaged with major providers of scholarly knowledge graphs, namely DataCite, Crossref, OpenAir, OpenAlex, Open Citations, and other quiz systems. And we went through an analysis of the data models that were locally adopted, trying to make pragmatic choices for inclusions of information and with regard to the entities being modeled and the properties and relations. And recently, when we were to devise the semantic layer, we always prefer to reuse and remix already available ontologies rather than releasing overloaded entities from scratch. So in our work, you will not find new classes, for example, for research products. So we do have 6 core entities, and if you see these names, it's evident initial focus on scholarly communication. So we have research products, which can be of 4 types: literature, data, research software, and other as a fallback category whenever we couldn't be more specific. And research product can be I mean, agents can contribute to research products, and an agent can be an individual, so a person or an organization or another kind of entity able to act, which is involved in the publication workflow. Then we have data source and venues, and we pushed for this kind of distinction because we have very peculiar things nowadays in scholarly communication, such as, for example, overlay journals. So one concept is the data source, which is the platform, gateway, service online that actually retains the metadata, descriptive metadata about an artifact or about an entity, research product, for example. It could be Zenodo, or HAL. They are both good examples. And the venue. Well, the venue is a publishing gateway, and it can be a conference or a journal. And sometimes the venue and the data source collide, but in other cases, they are 2 different things. For example, I published a paper to a conference which doesn't have proceedings by major publishers as proceedings on Zenodo. So the venue in that case would be the conference I selected for publication, but the data source where I get the metadata, descriptive metadata from is Zenodo. Then we do have grants, which describe money flowing into research endeavors by agents. That agents can be also funders. So grant represent these intention to put money into research projects, or to award people with some money to conduct their work. And topics, it's just to have a categorization against disciplines subjects, keywords, and to provide better contextual description about products mostly. So the core model, for the core model, we selected JSON LD as a format of reference, and we went through kind of field by field documentation online. So for example, here there's for the entity grant, there's the duration, which it says is an object, which is optional. Everything actually is optional in our model because we wanted to be inclusive with regard to sources that might not have certain information. So everything is pretty much optional. So it's either, if you don't have any information, this will not prevent you from sharing anything you have. And then so basically, yeah, so it's field by field because we follow the structure of the JSON file that specification is expected an SKG to share. And then we have the JSON LD context. So we have a W3 ID for that, and it basically imports all the used ontologies, as I was saying at the beginning when we had the overview, and it defines the semantic mapping. So here you can see like that SKG-IF context reuses all these ontologies that have been developed before and remixes them and defines here on the right. So for every key that's used and defined within this SKG-IF, it points to the relevant ontological concept, so that it is clear in a semantic, unambiguous way what kind of information is going to be conveyed by that property. And then Shackle completes the checks. So against the data model, so that whatever is exchanged not only has the context, it's also validated through shackles, so to check the ontology is indeed aligned and all the cardinalities and structural properties are validated. Okay, so this is where these vanilla APIs, the basic resolvers, they entered in the first iteration. So what I described at the beginning that was intended to wrap up in December. So we didn't have time to go through before December into details about the APIs. So the best shot for us was to define basic resolvers. And what a resolver does is mostly to ask a list of schemes that an endpoint is willing to resolve, and then have another method, another endpoint that it's able of resolving a couple of schema and ID and provide the description of in SKG-IF compliant way of just one record. And we also added a post, which is basically the same thing of the get, but you can do in bulk multiple resolutions in one shot. And this is where Renault work actually is going to be relevant. So most probably this basic resolver is going to be supplanted by the new APIs that Renault is gonna describe at the end, and that's fine. I just wanted to show these to make you aware of how things have progressed so far. Then, thanks to the fact that SKG-IF has been included in some proposals, we had to think about extensions and a way to expand the scope of this exquisitely scholarly communication related scope that we had at the beginning, and to extend it into something that is more like scientific knowledge graphs. So extensions primarily act as a plugin for extra properties, that can enhance the core entities and relations that are defined by the interoperability framework, and define and inject new properties, new relationships that are capturing some peculiarities that might be relevant for certain communities, but perhaps not, or not in the broader ecosystem. So this became really evident in these three projects. But I am aware that SKG-IF has been considered in Graphia and Lumen projects, which I'm not involved in, and I've been just notified about that by Silvio. And I don't have any other detail about this too, but and how they intend to use the SKG-IF. But the main the main take on the guidelines about extension is that the extension can do, they can extend the core as long as there is a shared interest or need that's backing the request. And that could be, for example, a project or a scientific community. And we prefer that rather than having individual needs, because then it would open to all sorts of edits. Like I wake up in the morning, I don't like something like that has been modeled, and just push for changes. And the other participation principle is about non-interference. So extension shouldn't introduce shortcuts that can potentially disrupt the relations and properties that are being outlined within the core and the APIs. So what can an extension do? Well, an extension can extend the core model by adding properties and relations to a core entity, or introduce new entities from scratch with their own properties and relations. I will make a few examples. So if you take the research product, there is no email, for example, of the corresponding author. That could be something that in certain contexts it's a valuable information. So, it would be possible in principle to extend that, contribute the author information within the research product to house that kind of property. While about introducing new entities, that's for example, the recent discussion been around services or research infrastructures, which are not modeled, but of course they are perfect candidates for being a new entities being modeled there. Like, for example, the synchrotron facilities. They are research infrastructures, and it makes a lot of sense to have them modeled from a data perspective, so to have relations to the responsible people and the relative grants and so on and so forth. Another entity that would make sense to model, for example, is peer review. If we think about the open peer review movement, peer reviews would be valuable to be modeled and linked to the products that they are related to have a persistent representation of them in these information systems. And then, of course, like the APIs can extend. In some cases, if an API alters an entity or introduce new ones, it has forcibly to extend also the APIs, because then you need to query those new entities and return those new informations. But in principle, an extension could just alter the behavior, the standard behavior of the APIs by introducing new filters, introducing new kind of endpoints, and so on and so forth. This was especially relevant for if you consider the basic vanilla flavored resolvers that we had at the beginning, where the behavior was kind of constrained. So having the chance to include a bit of behavior customization with extensions was actually something that was really sensible in the context of certain projects. So for extensions, we opted for centralized governance and structured lifecycle rather than forking and pull requests. So we opted for these. I mean, we are testing that, and we have the first development of extension development following these mechanisms. So basically, there is an application. The proponents of an extension should make an application first through GitHub issues, and then once that is approved, the proponents will be given a dedicated repository, and the repo on GitHub, it's included in continuous integration, continuous development workflow. So the documentation is always, every time you push commits into the repository on GitHub, there is a workflow that compiles everything and deploys a mini website which is along the same look and feel and the same pages of the main documentation. It is initially hidden just to allow like the kind of work in progress kind of thing. So it's hidden. You can still access that, but it's hidden. You cannot have it. I mean, a random visitor not knowing about it will not find a work in progress extension that easily. And once the extension has reached a level of maturity which is adequate, then it's going to be officially endorsed by the SKG-IF WG, the working group, and made public. And this kind of workflow keeps the activity, the maintenance activities of the working group separated by the extension development. So it's forking actually on these. So the extension is developed out of band and can be as fast paced as the proponents want. And but then once endorsed, so it goes back to the working group, it becomes official, everything is everything kind of merged. And at that point, it makes sense for the working group to see the uptake of the extension and potentially evaluate post-endorsement cherry picking of properties and entities to be feedback into the core. And that's because it might make sense. There might be things that we let out of scope at the beginning that actually might make sense to have modeled straight into the core, so to extend it by design. And thanks from the feedback of these of the projects that we are working with. I am committed into making these extension template. So every time we have a new extension development starting, we instantiated a blank template that serves as a toy sandbox to kickstart the development. So I'm trying to make it as exhaustive as possible, so to provide adequate guideline for the people that want to extend the framework. So that I still need to finish a couple of things. But the idea is to have something that's self-contained you can look at and say, okay, that I need to structure my work in such a way and you're basically not left out with no guidance whatsoever. And in the meanwhile, GraspOS is currently developing an extension to support responsible research assessment, and it's called Array SKG, and it's mostly introducing metrics. I will discuss about that in the second part. And with this, I hand over to Renaud for the last few slides.
Yeah, thanks, Andrea. So I'm Renaud Duim. So I work for the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility in Grenoble in France. So as said, Andrea, the need we have is to the need we had in December is to enhance the API we provide to the adopters. So we took the path to use the common standard, which is the OpenAPI specification. So we use the V3. So it's really close to it. It used to be called the Swagger API for developers, if there are developers in the room. So the OpenAPI allows us to define some HTTP REST APIs. So we can define operation, input and output, and also define constraints on the JSON output format. So it was useful for us to define some clear output of the JSON, especially because in JSON LD, when you have an output in JSON LD, the structure of the you can have many variations of the JSON structure, embedding entities, linked entities. So the idea was to have a simple JSON API that is used by most of the developers. There were discussions about using GraphQL as well, so it's not incompatible, but we made the choice to model with OpenAPI. Can you go to the next slide, Andrea, please? So most of the time, when you have an open API for developers, what you do is that you implement your API, you add annotation, and you get this definition of your operation. So it's called the code first approach. What we use for SKG-IF is the API first approach. So the working group, the SKG-IF working group, is providing the YAML file, the YAML that defines all the operation input and output. So the actual OpenAPI specification is this YAML file. So this YAML file, so the working group is actually not providing any implementation of the endpoint. And then it's up to each data source. So in the slide here, we see OpenAirGraph, OpenCitation. So any data source, knowledge graph, a catalog, a repository, can implement the SKG-IF OpenAPI. And so as said, Andrea, we have, so I'm part of the project OS Trails. There's also the GraspOS project, Scilake. So this project choose to have the SKG-IF in their architecture. So they also have they collaborate with additional data sources that plans to implement the SKG-IF API, so the Open API. Can you go to the next slide, please, Andrea? So here you have a representation of the YAML file. So we don't use here the standard Swagger UI. So we use one which is called which is open source. It's called the Stoplight Elements components. So what we define, you can see on the left, we have all the entities: product, person, organization, venue, grant, data source on the left, and it's a read-only API. So we have endpoint to get entity by ID. So and we return a JSON LD. So in a specific structure, we define which entity that will be embedded in the output. And we defined also basic search endpoints for each entity. So the idea to search by term in the title, in the abstract, typically in a research project, and also search by PID or by relation. So the idea is to have a set of command filters that can be used by that are known by any client. So when modeling this API, basically what we did is really to look at what is done in other API. We were strongly inspired by what has been done on OpenAlex API, especially on the filter part, but also what is available on Crossref, on PubMed API. So this YAML file, this open specification, is not yet available on the GitHub web page. But it will be available, and so you can implement it. So the target is June, just before summer. So we work with the project team, so OS Rails, Grasp OS, to look at the API and see what are our common requirements, and with OpenAI as well. So implementation will start after summer, and we also have a hackathon in Grenoble in France mid-June. So if you actually, I will put the link we'll put the link on the website, Andrea. I think it would be good we add it to the GitHub page. So it's 11 and 12 of June. So you are all welcome to in Grenoble if you want to look more deeply in the Open API. So that's it for me. Maybe can you go back? Sorry, on the slide, Andrea. What is good as well with the Open API, you see it on the right. You can provide some real life example on really what you expect on each entity. You have some constraints, and there are also some cool tools you can use to actually validate your implementation. So basically, when working on this topic, we use other tools that are open source, made by Spotlight, especially. You can have some implement some proxy servers, use some some start proxy server that validates that your implementation is compliant with the Open API. So you have a lot of tools that you can use to make sure that what you implement is aligned with what is defined by the Open API YAML file. So that's it, Andrea. Thank you.
Thank you, Renaud. So let's move. I promised the link here. Let me see. Anyone with link? Chat. No. Here. These are the slides. And let me share also the next set of slides. Thinking. Anyone knows? Okay, so should be fine. Okay, for this part, we move to adoption stories. Sorry, can you hear me? Is the connection still working?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
I don't know why I do have problems. Let me refresh this. So the first adopter that we onboarded, it's OpenAir, and I do have Miriam here with me.
Good morning.
You can access the slides. Yes. Okay, that's great. And yeah, so Miriam.
Good morning, everyone. And this is what we have done in OpenAir to be compliant with the SKG-IF specifications. We have developed, first of all, a mapping compliant with the SKG-IF version 1 model. And because we have started very early in creating these mappings, because we had to use it in a project that we have that you will see in the other slide. And we have also finished a mapping versus the core model of the SKG-IF version 2 specification. Not all the entities that are present in the SKG-IF model can be mapped against actual entities in the OpenAir graph, because some of them, like topics, venues, and agents, are not actual entities. So we had to use for the version 2 SKG-IF the on-the-fly generation of the identifier.
Which is something, I mean, is intended to be like this by the specification. Is not something that OpenAir
Yes.
introduced.
No. It is not introduced by OpenAir. It is specifying the specification of the mapping. So for some of the entities, the identifier will be specific for each mapping and will not be like persistent. So they will be local in the OpenAir sandbox. Where do we use we use these mappings? So the version 1 was used to pass data to lot 1. The information of the graph, a subset of the results of the graph, were mapped in a slightly extended version, SKG-IF version 1, to be provided to lot 1. And the whole OpenAir graph was delivered in the SKG-IF version 1 model for the FERCOR for IOSC project. So you can find that dataset in the FERCOR for IOSC community. The deposition does not follow the guideline of the SKG-IF, because to upload one single huge zip file was not very easy on my side, and it also not really usable on the side of the client. The version 2, we have mappings of subsets of the graph for the SciLake pilot. We have 5 mappings specific for each pilot in the project. They are not available, but in this moment, but they will be briefly in the Zenodo community associated to the SciLake project. Also, this mapping, this update doesn't follow the SKG-IF specification. I will provide, when Andrea finds the time to check them, some examples in the GitHub repository. And not SciLake, sorry, SKG-IF.
SKG.
And also a complete data set in the mapping version 2 for the FERCOR for IOSC project will be uploaded in the FERCOR for IOSC community in Zenodo.
Just a clarification, like version 1, version 2 is not actually the version you will see, you will find in the repos, but it's just a shortcut for us. Version 1 refers to the model that we used to have before JSON LD implementation kicked in. So it was a slightly different model with no semantic interoperability whatsoever. Version 2 is the one where
In the
all the
GitHub.
mappings. That is the one that you actually see the
the
documentation
GitHub.
about on GitHub.
We are planning to provide information in this SKG-IF version 2 model results through the API, but the timeline is to be defined also still. And we also are discussing, it is a bullet missing, but we are also discussing on extending the guideline when other people will start to provide data in the SKG-IF compliant model. We will extend the guideline to include in OpenAir this kind of data. And I have concluded. Was I on time?
Yeah. So, as I was saying, Silvio couldn't join, so he sent a video. Let's see if it works.
Everyone, I'm Silvio Peroni. I'm Director of Open Citations.
Can you hear?
Yep.
So.
Hello, everyone. I'm Silvio Peroni. I'm Director of Open Citations, and in this brief talk, I would like to introduce how we are Open Citation are working with SKG-IF. Before going ahead with further details, let me just clarify what Open Citation is. As listed in this slide, Open Citations is a community-guided open science infrastructure that has a clear mission in mind, that is that of making available as open data, bibliographic metadata, and citation links between bibliographic resources that are traditional publications like journal articles, book chapters, book, and so on, but also other additional kind of data that includes also data sets, software, and so on. Open Citations is an infrastructure managed by the Research Center for Open Scholarly Metadata at the University of Bologna, and as an infrastructure provides several kind of object as an output. We do have a developed data model based on sparse ontologies, which is used for providing the information that we store in our system. We do have two different databases, Open Citations Meta containing bibliographic metadata, basic bibliographic metadata of bibliographic resources, so title, authors, year of publication, and these kind of things. And another collection that is Open Citation Index that actually contains the citation links between the entities that we describe in Open Citations Meta. All data that we made available on CC0 to maximize their use, and include also all the software that we have developed and we are reusing according to the principle of open scholarly infrastructure is fully open source. In addition, all the data that we make available are downloadable full from our dumps, but also it is possible to programmatically access them by means of some service that we make available, are mainly REST API and Sparkle endpoints. And I would like to start from this latter point, because let's say that we as an infrastructure have been involved in the creation of SKG-IF since the beginning. We have provided our own point of view for what concerns the requirements that for us were necessary to be addressed within SKG-IF. And in particular, we have pledged for a future adoption of this framework. Indeed, the current status of Open Citation is as follows. Open Citations, as I anticipated, makes available data into two different collections. We have developed APIs for each of these collections that enable to download the data that we contain in several formats, but in particular, let's say JSON as one of the most used format for sharing this kind of information. This is the current status of our system. What we are planning to do, and something that we are under development right now, is first of all to create a new API which reuse the outputs of the existing APIs, combine those outputs to provide a result of a query that are compliant with SKG-IF. And so mainly with this API, the user can access our information as they are available by using SKG-IF, even if behind the scenes, all the information that we store are actually provided and stored into RDF triple stores, Open Citations Meta and Open Citation Index triple stores in particular. In addition to having a single API to query and to retrieve data according to an SKG-IF, the other important thing that we are developing is to insert in our programmatic dumps that we make of our data also this new format, the format defined by SKG-IF, which is a JSON-LD format that in the future will be one of the formats that we will use to produce the dumps of our data in order to make them available for all, also in SKG-IF, in addition to the current formats that we are already using for providing our data to the public. Just the last word here, since we have been involved in SKG-IF since the beginning, we have already worked on some examples of the data that we do have in our system and how they will be provided according to the SKG-IF framework. You can find some examples of this data that will be updated in the future weeks, by the way, in this at this URL, which is part of the SKG-IF GitHub repository. And that was mainly all from our side. And so thank you for your attention. And if you have any question about open citation in general, and in particular, how we deal with SKG-IF in our infrastructure, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you so much, and have a nice day. Hello, everyone. I'm Silvio Pero.
It goes again. Okay,
Morning.
so
Hello, everyone.
enough. Then we had a problem with data science. Mike was sent me the slides. He told me that he would send me a voiceover, but he never came back, which is unfortunate because I don't know, I don't have a script actually to go through the thing rather than reading. I mean, I know that they, I mean, because last time we were speaking with them, so this is basically reinforcing the same kind of roadmap. So they were engaging, rather than developing APIs, they were engaging into providing dumps, providing like the whole thing, the whole data set, as OpenAir did in a couple of instances. And what I see here is that there's a common difficulty in providing the zip file, which actually brings me to think that we might have to relax or revise the guidelines that we provided for snapshots, which is still part, I didn't discuss that, but it's still part of the specification. So the idea here, the idea behind that bit, it was to provide the same structure for all kind of dumps, so that whomever has to parse them can parse the whole information in an accessible way. But it looks like that it might be doable for small SKGs, but when it goes to something that's like more sizable, like OpenAir or DataSide or Open Citations for that matters, it becomes impracticable. So we possibly need to revise that. And the second thing is actually a valid point that I think Reno also mentioned at some point, is about content negotiation to get to get this, as far as I understood, to get the representation of an item directly by a content negotiation with an SKG-IF compliant format. There have been some experimentations also with the Fair Code for Years metadata schema cross registry. I've been also approached by the developers there to see whether we could have at some point to deposit crosswalks between SKGs, so adopters of the SKG IF format and the local data models. So to have all the mappings deposited at some point, but it's something that's crosswalk is something that we did at the early stages, but we didn't really maintain them after we transitioned to JSON and D. So probably it might be an exercise worth redoing at some point. And this concludes the first batch of adopters, and then we move to the projects. So for Austrades, I think we have Reno again, right?
Yeah. So thanks, Andrea. So as mentioned before, so Westrail, we use the SKG-IF interoperability framework for all the pilots, the demonstrators, so for the project. So we have 5 science cluster involved. So the SHOCS, social science and humanities, and ENVRI for environmental science, ESCAPE for astronomy, so PANOSC, photon and neutron science, and the other one is life science. So we have these clusters involved, and each cluster actually owns data catalogs or data repository. So the idea is to have a set of these systems to implement this SKG-IF API. OpenAir is also involved in the project, and so to also showcase what we can do with these with the API. So it can be getting information of research product funded by a grant. So the idea is to get extra information from the outside and to include it, for example, in your own system. So there is also work on candidate extension. One is about extension fields we would need for dataset, for example, and also for instruments. So that's it. So we will, as I said before, we will work on this API in the hackathon in Grenoble mid-June. That's it. Andrea, if you want to.
Thanks. Then we have Thanasis next to me for Siley.
Okay. So hi everyone, I'm Thanas Vergoulis from Athena Research Center in Greece. Siley is a project, a NEOSC-related project that plans to help people from different scientific fields to better organize their knowledge, their domain knowledge, that currently is scattered and fragmented in different places and in different formats. So we basically offer a toolbox of different components that can be used to transform knowledge from unstructured format to more structured ones, using the knowledge graph technologies as a tool for that. And in the context of the project, we are building a couple of scientific knowledge graphs, each focusing in a particular scientific domain. And the plan is to create knowledge graphs that contain information related to the literature, like all the other scholarly knowledge graphs that we have seen earlier, like the opener graph, for instance, but enrich it also with some domain-specific entities that are important for researchers when they are searching for particular research questions in their domain. For instance, consider a researcher in cancer research domain. They would like to know about any connections of a particular gene to diseases or to drugs. So this kind of entities should be inside the scientific knowledge graph so that they can query it and then reveal relationships between them that can be very valuable for their research. In this context, I will not go into further details about the project. You can find more on our website, but I will focus only on how we are using the SKG-IF work. We are using SKG-IF as the specification for all the graphs that we are building so that they are interoperable. So every graph follows the standard of SKG-IF for the basic entities that Andrea has presented earlier. And they are providing some dumps that are aligned to the specification regarding those entities. We also have to provide an API, but this API is different than what you would expect because the focus here is to support more complex types of queries. So we are based on SKG-IF model, but we have built an API that is not compliant to any specification that we have right now because it follows the GraphQL approach to be more expressive for that reason. And regarding the domain-specific entities, for those, we have 4 pilots from 4 different domains: neuroscience, cancer research, energy research, and transport research. For those that make sense because they have a lot of specific parts. I think this is more or less the most important part.
Okay, thank you, Athanasi. And then back to me for RESPOS. So RESPOS is a project that aims to develop and put into an operation an infrastructure for next generation research assessment. Bye-bye. Mostly in the effort of being aware of open science and open science assessment reform and so on. So part away from metrics and indicators that are traditionally associated to assessment exercises. And basically, like the workshop is the project is organized as a set of pilots that are taking advantage of data and services that are provided by the infrastructure. And SKG-IF is the intended glue that so the common language that enables all the pieces to communicate. And I mean, pieces taking part of the infrastructure. So that's all the federated data sources and services and enhancement tools should be aware of these interoperability layers in order to exchange information one another. And so within RESPOS, we apply for an extension, which is called Array SKG. Yes, So Silvio, which is chairing the working group, is also involved in GraspOS. So he has been championing this agile ontology development methodology, which is called SAMOD, and that basically led us into describing motivating scenarios and informal competency questions that eventually, by an iterative process and steps, led us into the definition of modlets and the basically addition to the core data model, the new properties and new entities that are capable of describing metrics and indicators for research products and for agents. And this is possible in two different kind of flavors. So we decided to have scalar indicators as in engagement counters. I put here engagement counters because I didn't want to put citations, because actually GraspOS, being a Coara sponsored project, it's kind of not let's say super friendly with citations. So citations are one way of expressing academic engagement, but there are also download views and other kinds of manifestations for engagement activities. And then the other flavor is about like badges. These are more on-off. For example, code open, data open, it's something it's either open or it's not. And so there are no shades, while the scalar indicators they usually have a number that's fluctuating and the methodology to compute that number, potentially literature that's associated with the methodology and so on. And then the extension also has foreseen the introduction of an academic profile, which is basically like narrative CV structured in sections. Every section has a title and refers to a number of products that are relevant for that section. So that would be all for the second part. And I think now the presentation time is over. And I would bounce the ball back to the audience for the last part, which just one slide here. So Q&A and discussions. I already saw that there are a couple of messages. Thanks for the presentations. I have to leave. Is there a JSON schema for, no. So there's no JSON schema at the moment, I'm afraid. So you still can see the screen, yes. So the way it works is, thank you, Sophie. The way it works, as I was saying, that so the JSON context here, this one provides all the ontological remix and the keys, the key mappings between the keys defined in the SKG-IF domain and the ontologies they refer to be not ambiguous. And then the documentation goes property by property, all the enumerations are here, and the shackle file provides checks, putting these two pieces together. So part of the thing is on the documentation pages, part of the thing is on the JSON context, and you put the two pieces together. I understand that the JSON schema could be helpful. I think so. The API is a bit more constrained because in that regard, and because with the open API you actually define the exchange messages. Am I right, Reno?
Yes, I was about to answer this to Tom. Yes, that was our intent. When you have JSON LD, the structure is not actually defined. You can have many formats, as I said before, about embedding an entity or linking it in the JSON output. So in the SKG-IF Open API, you can get a source by ID, So for example, you give a constraint on what is the exact structure of the JSON you expect. Does that answers to your question, Tom? Is that clear?
Yeah, that clarifies it. Thanks. So yeah, that was the bit that I didn't quite get. So it's a JSON LD format rather than a JSON format, which means you can essentially represent it in different ways.
Yeah.
The same information, right?
Yes. For example, when you're in JSON LD, if you have a research product, you may decide that the authors is just linked with just its ID. So it means that when you get a research product, you will have to do another call to get each author. So when we define the SKG-IF Open API, you said that when you query a research product, let's say a publication by its ID, you get a JSON LD output, but you constrain the fields you want to be sent along with the publication. So all the author name, first name, last name, org ID. So that's the way to have a JSON structure that you can parse in the way you expect your client expect it. So that's why we actually created the Open API to start.
Okay, all right, thank you. That's helpful.
I copy paste the links to the missing nodes. Just check if they should work, and I will not delete this presentation any soon. So
Maybe question for Tom. How do you use BigQuery? What are your use cases with this kind of entities?
Yeah, so I suppose I'm thinking about it from a very large data set point of view, similar to you lot. What we did is we took the public data file that we produce every year. So this is all the public data in the ORCID registry. And we basically transformed it from our XML format, which is millions of XML documents zipped up that we put on Figshare. We transformed that into a queryable data source on BigQuery. So you can now just run SQL queries against it. Because what we realized is for those kind of analytic jobs, what people were having to do is download our data file, write a parser, parse it, and stick it in a database so they could query it, right? So we just thought, why don't we just shortcut that? Now, it is on a proprietary system like BigQuery, right? But that means it's free for us to produce. It just costs people to query it, and they have to pay Google, right? So it's not ideal, but as a shortcut for making the data more accessible and usable, it's quite good. And one of the things you can do with BigQuery is you can give it a JSON schema, and it creates a data source structure for you. And what that means for me at ORCID is I could write some kind of transform in BigQuery that would essentially turn the ORCID data set into a data set that looks like this, like the interoperability framework format, which would be similar to what DataSite have done, I guess, which is produce a data dump of all their data in a related format, right? So I was thinking maybe this is something that we could think about in the future as a way of approaching this. Does that make sense?
Yes, clear.
Okay. Yeah, because it's a very pragmatic way of us doing it if we were to do it.
yeah, like as a side note, we are using BigQuery in OpenAir as well. I set up a data set where you can find pretty much everything. I mean, anything that's in the Zenodo snapshot that we produce every 6 months now is side loaded on BigQuery in the same format. So there's no SKG-IF involved yet in there, but I mean, it's OpenAir is committed to the standard. Now at the moment, I mean, Miriam left, but it's, I mean, I can speak for her. It's if you see, like, if you recollect, our presentation is mostly on the, exposing data in SKG-IF compliant format. But in this technical meeting we are at these days, we are actually we started to talk about ingesting data, like the perspective about what about ingesting data in SKG-IF. And this is something that's I mean, it is not included in the guidelines, in the OpenAir guidelines at the moment, but it could eventually catch up. And yesterday I was talking with Renaud in a one-on-one meeting, and he was actually saying that it could be, but there could be actually possibly the value of the one of the best use cases that SKG-IF could have is actually for small sources that could provide not many, but I mean, a lot of relations that are not present anywhere else. That could be a valuable use case where you can expose things in a model that's already been adopted and there and validated, rather than inventing the wheel once again. That could be something that at the moment is not implemented in OpenAir, but it could be in parallel to the OAI PMH harvesting procedures in the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is your OpenAir data set on BigQuery publicly available?
Yeah. We haven't been verbal about it, and there have been some delays. But let me see if I can point you to that. So I gave a tutorial in October. Let's see. So I should have let me see the community call. I can. I think that should be here and the references. Let's see. Yeah. So you can take this presentation. I'll pass it in the chat.
Oh, brilliant. I'll post my link in case anyone else is interested in that.
And yeah, the data set is public. So if you go to slide 45, so 41, there's the ID of the public data set, and at 45, 46, there's a first tutorial we gave in October, where, I mean, it was a slightly different version of the data set. It was a previous iteration of that, but not the public one. But it's the same kind of thing. So if you're already familiar with BigQuery, I think you will find yourself at home in no time.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Any other burning question? I don't see anything in the chat. Ah, cool. Thanks for sharing the ORCID on BigQuery. By the way, do you maintain that like with fresh updates, or is it just one-off?
So at the moment, it's kind of like a pilot. So we're not committed to doing it every year. We've just done it this year just to see, gauge community interest. We did it with the help of Dimensions, who had basically, they'd already done this work internally, and they let us basically share it. So if we get enough interest, we will continue to do the public data file this way once a year. So that'll be static once a year. And we're investigating options about how do we make real or near real-time data available this way to our members.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, So, but it's going to be depend on, is this something our members are asking for? Because
Yeah.
otherwise we won't build it. But it seems useful to me, right? I used it yesterday to answer a query and work out. Interestingly, I just to give you an example of the things I use it for. I used it yesterday to check the rate of users entering only information in the given name / first name box and not entering a last name or surname, right? Because we made a change to the user interface. And what I discovered is our change has increased the error rate of people of entering all their names in just one box rather than in both boxes. So, and I worked out that this error rate is much bigger for English names than it is for Chinese names, right? So we've made it worse for one thing and better for another, but we can get those kind of insights out of BigQuery really quickly. So yeah, it's really helpful for just internal uses like that.
I remember these inconsistencies at some point, like a few years ago. I was working with Medium on unintended usage of ORCID. I can't remember if you
I do. And it's amazing how, sorry, this is probably off topic, but when you enter a given name, surname in ORCID, there's a little bit of text in the box that sort of gives you guidance about what to put in the box. And changing the contents of that can change the error rate 10%.
Yeah.
Right? And all it is 3 words saying enter your given name or something else like the name you most commonly go by. That can have a huge impact on the accuracy of data researchers are entering.
Okay, no?
Yeah, question for Tom. On ORCID, is there any will to enhance the metadata you have for authors? Let's say the grants that are assigned to a person or the project, or I mean entities that could be conveyed by the SKG-IF, not only from ORCID, but sorry, not only from Crossref or big sources, but more small sources that could provide this information.
That is something we're constantly working on. Yeah. So we are constantly trying to work with our member community to have them build integrations that contribute this data. And we are getting there, right? So over 50% of records have some kind of active records have some kind of validated information now, which is essentially a green trust mark that's on their record. So it's a bit of information with provenance, right? So at least 50% of records now have at least one item on their record that has some kind of provenance, like the university says this is true, the funder says this is true, a publisher says this is true, right? We might add a work. But yeah, we make no claims to sort of having completeness, but we have around 3.5 million active records that have works and affiliations on them. So we're getting there. But yeah, it's just constant work to try and work with community members to help their researchers populate their records, right? So with funders, we run a funder interest group. We're just trying to get them to build it into their funding systems or just turn on the option that already exists, right? That will means when someone applies for a grant with their ORCID ID, their ORCID record is automatically updated. All this technology has been available for 10 years and it's just plodding along, getting people to turn this functionality on in their systems. But yeah, ORCID itself does not add anything to ORCID records. I think is maybe what you're getting at is, do we have a plan to do that? Not necessarily, but we are putting more and more things in place that point users to other places that help them populate their record, if that makes sense. So there's some work this year going on where we're going to be matching users with universities and then working out, does the university have an ORCID integration that can keep their record up to date? And if it does, we'll let the user know, go here and click this button and you'll have a more populated ORCID record, right? So we're working on those kind of mechanisms of populating the data.
Okay, great. So I think if there's anything else to touch, then I think we can close in time. That's first. I think our slot was till 10:30, 11:30. Yes. So yeah, I can say goodbye and have a nice continuation with RZA and have a nice day. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, Aurel.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks. Goodbye.